In this video, we are going to have a look at returning the response from the server after our file has been uploaded. The first thing we're going to do, if we open the terminal, we're going to create a resource because that's what we're going to return from within our controller. So PHP artisan make resource, and we're going to call it asset resource. So asset resource. And if we now open our app, HTTP, and we should have, if we just refresh it, there we go, resources, and we have this asset resource. And from within here, what we are going to do is return an array of which will represent the asset. However, we want this to be returned back to the client. So first of all, we're going to return the ID of the asset. We're going to take this ID, and now we can use this keyword from within the resource as if we were within the model itself. So ID, then we're going to have name, which will come from this original name. Then we are going to have extension, which will come from this extension. We will also provide URL, which will come from this URL. Then it's going to be variants, this variants. And lastly, we are going to have preload, which will contain the array of all of the images that need to be preloaded when the response is being received. So I'm going to refer to this preload, and we're going to create this method in just a moment. I'm just going to create the method stub for the time being. And this one will also return array. Now let's just add some doc blocks. So all this highlighting's dealt with. So property integer ID. Then we're going to have property string original name. Then we're going to have property string also, which was going to be this extension. Oops, not this extension, it's just extension. Then we're going to have another string, URL. Then we'll have property array, which is a variant. And that's all we need for here. Let me just open asset model, and let me just check captions, variant size. Yeah, they're all good. Okay, so that's what we have. Now for the preload, what we're going to do is check if empty this variant. If the array is empty, meaning obviously we are not dealing with the image, there are no variants. In this case, we simply return an empty array. Otherwise, we are going to create a URLs variable, and we go for array merge. And first item will be this URL, the original images, URL, and then array map. And we are going to map our variants using the callback function, which will receive a variant as array. So for this array map, we need to pass this variants. And here we're simply going to return variant URL. And now what we're going to do is return. And now one thing we haven't actually done, let me just go back to our traits within the tests and asset trait. We have this preload method, which looks pretty much the same. What we need to do, because obviously if we are dealing with the variants that are using the reference to the original image, then there's no point obviously to return 4 times the same URL and try to preload the same image 4 times. So what we need to do here is wrap this with array unique, which will only return unique values. So let's now copy all this return statement, and paste it into our preload method within the asset resource. As you can see, these methods look nearly identical. Here we pass in the instance of the model. Here we're using this reference, but obviously this is for the testing purposes. This is the actual implementation. Therefore, I won't be extracting this to a separate method, because here we actually want to make sure that whatever we're returning is matching our preload assertion. So I'm going to save it, close it. Let's add some doc blocks. And let's say get preload paths, URLs, perhaps. Save and close all this, and now we can open our page image controller. Sorry, not page, product image controller. And here what we're going to do is, first of all, we are going to associate the returned value from the saved image. As you can remember, we are returning the instance of the saved asset. So let's associate it with the variable asset. And here we're going to return now this new asset resource, and we pass this asset as an argument to it. Let's now check our test, and if, with any luck, we should go past this assert response created with JSON. So let's run it, and now we are on 133, which is here. Preload doesn't seem too much. Let's just see what the difference is. Data, okay, we have this data, and this is because resource by default wraps the response with this index data. If we go back to the browser and look for our resource, you'll see that wrapping, data wrapping. And it says, obviously it shows you what structures are gonna have. If we want to unwrap it, return it without data, we need to add this JSON resource without wrapping to our app service provider and the boot method. So let's open our app service provider, and you will find it under the providers, app service provider, and here before this schema default length, let's add this, the call to this method on the JSON resource. Let's rearrange this imports, save it and close it. And now if we run this test again, we are going a little bit further. Now it's 202 that it's failing, and 202, we scroll down, 202 fails here. It fails asserting that there are 8 variants because we're not generating any variants yet. So in the next video, we're going to tackle this problem.